No, the title is not clickbait. Boom sucked. I don't understand why anyone would like that unless they just like everything Doctor Who. I don't get why people call this episode good, but we'll get into it. I think this is pretty easily the worst episode of the new RTD kind of era, including the David Tennant specials. I think this is worse than the Star Beast, which I didn't think the Star Beast was that bad. I just didn't think it was that great. But this is really not that good. The one thing, there's technically two things, but the one thing that I think this episode got right, that I could genuinely appreciate and totally get why people would like it for, is the Doctor. I think the writing, the acting, he's great in this, and I don't think he was bad in any of his appearances. I think even in the giggle when he was just there for a little bit, he definitely showed he was the Doctor. But I can definitely see people feeling that there's something missing from him in Space Babies and The Devil's Chord, and that's something I think is definitely back here. Like I said, no complaints with the Doctor. I guess I'll say the one other positive that I have for this episode, which is that I think the plot mostly made sense, which I don't really care about logical coherence, especially if there's any characterization at all to dig on, then I don't really care about if the plot makes sense, but it is a part of storytelling, and I think it's mostly good here. The plot making sense isn't always guaranteed in Moffat's stories, so I'll give him that. I guess the next thing I'll get into, which could be kind of subjective, could be just down to me, but personally I was not invested. I didn't feel any tension or suspense in this episode because they very clearly set up the stakes in terms of what could go wrong if the Doctor fails, right? Half the planet's gonna blow up, he's gonna die if the landmine activates, but they don't establish how he's gonna avoid it. And it's not like the episode's really about him figuring it out. It's the tension that should be there from oh, how is he gonna figure out how to do this? It's not really there because he's kind of just sitting around not working towards that goal. And then in the end, he gets bailed out by something mostly out of his control. From that sense, like I said, this could just be personal because there are very clear stakes in terms of what could go wrong. I just kind of need to at least either know how things are going to go right, because if something's inevitably going to happen, then there isn't really any stakes. If a character's going to die, then there's no real stakes of whether or not they're going to die if we're fairly sure it's going to happen. Next is the thing that I care most about, which is characterization, particularly in Doctor Who for the companion. Because I feel like the Doctor's been the main character for the entire run of the show, and through that time he's got so many characterization and so many arcs that it's as long as the Doctor is just the Doctor, like he is in this episode, I don't really need in-depth characterization. Whereas the companion, since they keep rotating, they have limited time, I feel like the characterization of the companion or companions is the thing I care about most in Doctor Who. And I think that's one thing that was kind of lacking in the first 3 episodes that Ruby was in. And Moffat does do something that I think is a big action that would give a lot of characterization, where the Doctor tells her to toss him the dead bot. I don't know, the urn thing. I don't know what it's called, but the thing that he holds that holds the dead guy. The Doctor tells her to toss it to him, and she goes, "No, I'm gonna hand it to you." And he's like, "No, this is a terrible idea." And she insists on it and does it anyway, which would characterize her as someone who's confident, even when she doesn't really even if she doesn't necessarily know what she's talking about, or just, yeah, someone who's really confident. In terms of the themes of this episode, I do think it's a good message, as in I think it's something that's just a good message that people should hear, about capitalism and war and how they kind of coincide with each other, and the issues that arise from that. But I don't know, it's not a particular unique or extremely profound message, and I think the way it's executed is not good. I think kind of because of the structure of this episode, because the doctor's just on a landmine the whole time, it's basically all tell, no show. They just tell us that they believe there are enemies there, even though they've never seen them. We don't actually get to see it. We don't get to see it on a scale larger than 2 soldiers. And then the doctor just kind of tells us that this is bad. But there's a point, the second, at least for me, at the very least for me, the second, halfway through the episode or somewhere around there, when the doctor says, he's questioning the soldiers. I don't remember her name or his name or any of their names, but he's like, you've never actually seen them, have you? Referring to their enemies. And the second she goes no, we haven't seen them, it's I get it. They aren't actually real. It's just the algorithm, which is fine. It's fine. It's totally fine to reveal that halfway through the episode. And all the pieces have been put in place, and it's that makes sense. It's perfectly fine. But then towards the end of the episode, the doctor gives this big monologue explaining to them how they're all fake, which is basically just him explaining to the audience, because he's explaining it to the characters, right? But the way it's presented is he's explaining it to the audience. And the big thing is that that's not what saves the day. He said, oh, well, you have to surrender. That's the one way to deactivate the landmine. But that's not what happens. They don't end up surrendering. So him telling them isn't actually what saves the day. So it didn't affect anything. It was just him explaining to the audience, which I guess ties into my next criticism, which is kind of just of one moment, but it's the climax, it's the ending, so I think it's very important. The ending has nothing to do with the rest of the episode. The ending is this father, after he's an AI, which that's, I think, the one thing that makes no sense is how does an AI copy of someone still have some of their soul left? And that's a crazy statement, but again, like I said, I don't really care that much about that. The thing I have a problem with is that this is a character who was on screen for 3 seconds. Him and his daughter have been given 0 characterization. They're cardboard cutouts, which would be okay if they were plot devices. But then, the big moment, the climax, is this cardboard cutout saving the day because he loves his daughter. Which has nothing to do with the themes of the episode. It has nothing to do with even the other side characters, which were more prevalent. It has nothing to do with our main characters. It doesn't do anything to actually help the episode. And like I said, I also don't think it makes sense. And I don't care about this father and his daughter because I don't care about cardboard cutouts. I don't get how this moment would work for someone. I think probably the worst part of the episode, and the part that I genuinely do not see how anyone could like it, I don't get it, is the 2 characters that I forgot their names, but their character trait is that they like each other and the other one doesn't know. And that's all there is to their character. That's it. We establish she likes him and he likes her, but she thinks he doesn't like her and he thinks she doesn't like him, which again, it's fine to just have that in an episode, and those characters don't have very much characterization. That would just mean that they're just kind of there to get the plot to progress. They don't add anything to the episode, but they don't take anything away. Until there's this big emotional moment for them. And I'd like to mention what actually happens and how it's presented is so cheesy and corny and just dumb, which I don't care too much about, but it's hard for me to take. I don't care that much about that. It doesn't affect my enjoyment too much. I guess it actually kind of does, but I try not to like discredit films too much just because I think the presentation of something is cheesy. But he gets like killed while she's not looking, and then she hears his voice and then looks back and he's an AI. So I was watching this with my parents, and I was like going like this, trying not to laugh because it was so dumb. And again, I feel like that moment could have worked if it was given to characters that had at least any characterization at all. If they had any actual characterization, I think it would have maybe not worked, but it would have at least had something there. All we know about these characters is that they like each other but don't know that the other one likes them. And then one of them dies. That's the entire depth of that moment. That's so surface level. I'm sorry, I don't care. I can't care about that. If it just tied into something. That's the thing, there's all these parts of the episode that don't tie in any way, and on their own, the moments, them themselves are so paper thin that they don't work on their own, and then they don't tie into each other, so they don't work as a whole. I don't get it. I think the episode is bad. I think it's poorly written because of the things that I've laid out so far, they are why I personally didn't like it, but I also think they're like failures to achieve the goal that Moffat probably had when he was writing this. So I think it's poorly written, but this isn't like, I was so, at best, when I first watched this, at best I was bored. At the worst, like I said, I was either laughing at the episode because of how bad it was, or just like annoyed because of how bad it was. And so I expected everyone to hate this. I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go online and see people like, this new season of Doctor Who is like terrible, because people really didn't like Space Babies, honestly. So Space Babies is a better episode than this. Like, everything in it functions. Like I said, I just don't think the characterization for Clara is that strong. And I said Clara. Moffat in this episode is writing Ruby as if she's Clara. That's why that moment contradicts Ruby's existing characterization, because it's just a Clara thing. But no, I don't think the characterization for Ruby in Space Babies was very strong at all. But I think the rest of the episode works fine. So, and the Devil's Court I think is like fine, like it works. Again, I just don't think we got too much characterization for Ruby, which is what I care about. But I was kind of annoyed that people are like, oh my god, this new season is like, it's the worst ever, it's horrible, Doctor Who's ruined. So I expected to see more of that after this episode, and everywhere I look, everyone's like, this is the best. I saw some people saying like, this is one of the best Doctor Who episodes ever. Like, where, what part of this is even close to being like a good episode? I'm so confused. So you know how people, when you dislike something, people say, oh, you were just nitpicking. You were like looking for problems. You were like looking so deep, trying to find any issue you could. I did that, but with positives for this episode. I rewatched it and I was like looking just so hard, scouring for anything that I liked about it. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, I guess the plot kind of makes sense, mostly makes sense. And yeah, the Doctor's pretty good, but everything else is, I think it's just awful. That's why I didn't like Boom. That's why I think it's a bad episode. Like I said, pretty easily the worst of this new kind of era. I don't know what to call it, season, because technically the season started with Church on Ruby Road, but the David Tennant specials are included. So far, I think the best we've got from anything is Wild Blue Yonder, which was fantastic. But, well, fantastic, maybe not the word I should use in Doctor Who, but yeah, Wild Blue Yonder was great. I liked Church on Ruby Road. I liked Devil's Court. I liked Space Babies. I liked The Giggle. Star Beast. But yeah, I think Wild Blue Yonder is the one great episode we've had, and Boom is the one bad episode that we've had, which I get people would disagree with, but I'm interested to hear, like, after, like, any of you who really like Boom, after hearing what I have to say, like, how would you refute what I said? Would you just say like, oh, I don't really care about that stuff? Or do you think I'm wrong, and why? Yeah, I want to like things. Like I said, I went through like trying to like it. I really want to like liking films and shows and episodes is more fun than not liking them, but I can't, like, if I think it's bad, I can't just pretend I don't think it's bad. I'm not gonna pretend I don't think it's terrible. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Boom was pretty bad, pretty not good. Anthony Fantano, not good. That's my take.